The bank alert should have been my first clue. It popped up in the middle of a budget review meeting, blinking with red urgency. Unusual activity on your account. But I was knee-deep in spreadsheets and emails, too tired and too caffeinated to care. I just tapped my screen off and kept working. Big mistake. 2 hours and 1 cold latte later, I finally took a second to breathe, and that's when I checked the app. Gone. Everything. Checking. Savings. Emergency fund. Every dollar I'd worked so hard to build up was wiped clean. Zero. Nothing left but a sinking feeling in my chest and a faint buzzing in my ears. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through the transactions. Flights to Dubai. A luxury suite in Singapore. Shopping sprees in places I couldn't pronounce. None of it mine. I was still trying to understand how when the truth hit me like a brick. Lena, my mother, she was the only person who still had access to that joint account from college. One I'd stupidly forgotten to close. Hey, you okay? My best friend Maya leaned into my cubicle, eyes wide with concern. She caught the look on my face and sat down without waiting for an answer. Tess, talk to me. I showed her my phone, my voice barely above a whisper. She took everything. Maya blinked. Wait, your mom? I nodded. You're kidding. I wish. She sat with me in silence for a second. You need to call her. Right now. I did. Straight to voicemail. Twice. Then 5 more times. Nothing. By the time I packed up and left the office, I was running on panic and fumes. The drive back to my childhood home was a blur of angry tears and gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted this to be a mistake. But when I pulled into the driveway and saw her car was gone, my stomach sank deeper. The front door was locked. I let myself in with the spare key under the fake rock by the rosebush. Everything inside was still neat, still familiar. At first, I almost thought maybe she just went on a trip. Then I saw the envelope on the kitchen counter. My name written in her loopy handwriting, Tessa. I opened it, hands shaking. By the time you read this, I'll be overseas. I'm sorry, but I needed a fresh start. One day, you'll understand. Love always, Mom. Understand? I crumpled the paper in my fist, my whole body going cold. She emptied my life savings and ran off for a fresh start. My throat burned. A scream clawed its way up and burst out of me like fire. The silence afterward was deafening. And then my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Hello? My voice cracked. Is this Tessa Bell? A man's voice. Calm. Professional. Yes. Who is this? My name is Miles Cartwright. I'm the attorney for your grandmother, Evelyn Hale. I've been trying to reach you. My chest tightened. What is this about? I'm sorry to inform you, but your grandmother passed away last week. I froze. Grandma Evelyn. The only person who ever stood up to Mom. The woman who helped pay for my first semester of college when Lena tried to sabotage it. Who called me every Sunday just to check in even when I forgot. Who never once made me feel like I was a burden. Gone? Miles kept talking, something about a will, a meeting, legal matters, but I couldn't hear any of it. Not through the ringing in my ears. Just then, the front door opened. Tess. It was Jonah, my ex-boyfriend, but also the only person who ever truly knew what it was like growing up with Lena as a mother. Maya must have called him. He crouched down in front of me, looking into my eyes with quiet steadiness. What happened? She took it all, I choked. Everything I had. And now Grandma's gone too. He placed a hand over mine. She always said not to let anyone steal your future. She believed in me, I whispered. She still does. My phone buzzed again. This time, a message. From Lena, subject, family emergency Tess, is taking some personal time due to a family matter. Please direct all inquiries to me while she's away. Jonah read over my shoulder. She sent this to your job? She's covering her tracks, I muttered, making sure no one asks questions. He didn't speak right away. She's good at that, he finally said. Getting close. Acting like she's changed. I let my guard down. Jonah looked at me, serious now. What are you going to do? I thought about Grandma, about her stubborn wisdom, her quiet strength. The way she always said, sometimes karma needs a little help. I stood up. I'm going to give karma the help it needs. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face smiling like she hadn't just stolen my future. I lay awake replaying everything from the last 6 months, the random text check-ins, the way she started asking about my job again, how she complimented me when I landed the Harper client. At the time, I thought she was just trying to rebuild our relationship. I was so desperate to believe she'd changed that I ignored every red flag. Turns out she was just warming me up, grooming me, like a con artist does before the final pull. The next morning, I drove to Miles Cartwright's office. It was a high-rise downtown, the kind of place where the coffee costs more than my lunch, and the walls smell like old money. Miles greeted me with a soft handshake and a solemn expression. Tessa, I'm very sorry for your loss. Evelyn was extraordinary. I nodded, swallowing hard. She was everything my mom wasn't. He led me into a conference room where a thick manila envelope sat waiting with my name on it. Before we begin, I want to tell you something personal, he said, adjusting his glasses. Your grandmother was my client for over 20 years, but more than that, she was my friend. And in the last few years, you were her biggest concern. I didn't know what to say, so I just stared at the envelope. What's in there? I asked, trying to sound stronger than I felt. He opened it carefully, laying out a stack of documents, a small set of keys, and a leather-bound journal. Evelyn left everything to you. All of it. The properties, investments, accounts, her shares in Hale Hospitality. It's substantial. How substantial? I asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Approximately $18.6 million, he said calmly. My brain didn't process the number at first. I blinked. 18, wait, what? It includes her boutique hotels, liquid assets, a few rental properties, and a trust that's already matured. But what about Lena? I asked, dread creeping into my voice. Miles paused, then looked at me with a kind of quiet certainty that told me this wasn't a mistake. Your mother was explicitly excluded. Evelyn made her intentions clear. Lena has taken enough. Her exact words. I let out a half laugh, the kind that sounds more like a cough. She's going to go nuclear. She already did, he replied. She's been calling the office nonstop since last week, threatening legal action, trying to get her hands on anything she can. I sighed. Let me guess. She's pretending to be devastated. She emailed a 2-page letter claiming emotional trauma, he confirmed. But Evelyn was smart. Everything's airtight. I glanced at the journal. And that? That's from Evelyn. She asked that it be given to you in private. Said you'd know what to do when the time came. My fingers hovered over it for a moment before I picked it up and opened to the marked page. Her handwriting was familiar, crisp and steady. Tessa, if you're reading this, I'm gone. But don't let grief distract you. Your mother will come. She'll smile, cry, say all the right things. She'll want control. Let her think she's winning. Then show her the trap. Use the house. Use your heart. But don't forget she chose herself. So now, choose you. I closed the journal slowly, the weight of her words settling deep in my chest. Grandma hadn't just seen this coming. She had prepared for it. I want to see the house, I said to Miles. Today. He handed me the keys. It's yours now. The main property's been untouched for months. Staff is minimal, but the security system's fully operational. As I pulled into the long, tree-lined driveway of the estate later that afternoon, I felt a strange mix of grief and responsibility. This place had been my childhood sanctuary. It was where I spent every summer away from the chaos of my mother's mood swings and broken promises. The air smelled like pine and lavender, just like it used to. The moment I walked inside, I knew exactly what room to use. The master suite, the one room Lena had never been allowed in, the room Grandma kept locked, even when she wasn't home. And that's where the plan began to take shape. Over the next week, I turned that room into bait, velvet furniture, designer bags, an open closet with tags still on the clothes, a sleek laptop placed perfectly on the marble desk, filled with fake documents, investment portfolios, hotel acquisition plans, future contracts that sounded real enough to catch a con's eye. And hidden behind every wall and piece of furniture, cameras. Not just motion sensors, audio, heat mapping, facial recognition. I didn't just want proof, I wanted the whole production. Maya helped with the setup. She had a cousin in cybersecurity who owed her a favor. We coded the laptop to automatically forward every keystroke to a backup drive. Anytime she tried to send a file or open an attachment, logged, timestamped, archived. This is next level, Maya said one night, staring at the live feed from the dummy laptop. You sure you want to go through with it? She stole my life, I said quietly. I just want her to tell the truth for once, even if it's only to herself. A few days later, I asked Miles to let it slip purely by accident. Of course, that I was considering reconnecting with my mother, that maybe I was open to splitting the inheritance. Predictably, 2 hours later, I got an email from Lena. The subject line made my stomach turn. Let's talk. The body of the message was classic her, fake warmth, layered manipulation. Sweetheart, I was so heartbroken to hear about Evelyn. I know you must be overwhelmed. Can we meet? I think we both need closure. Love, Mom. Maya read it over my shoulder and let out a laugh. Closure? What is this? A Netflix drama? She's already packing her suitcase, I said. Bet she thinks she's flying in to negotiate over champagne. Or to manipulate her way into controlling the assets, Maya added. So what do we do now? I pulled up the camera feeds and checked the safe again. The fake jewelry inside looked just valuable enough to trigger greed. I smiled. Now, we give her a reason to come home. She arrived 3 days later. I watched her through the security feed before she even knocked on the door. Same walk, same overly polished look, same designer sunglasses she always wore when she wanted to project power. Her suitcase rolled behind her like a loyal pet. She stood outside the front door for a second too long, probably rehearsing whatever performance she'd planned. I didn't open it. Jonah did. He played the part perfectly warm but distant, just helpful enough to avoid suspicion. "Tessa's tied up with hotel meetings," he said with a polite smile as she stepped inside. "She asked me to get you settled in. You'll be staying in the master suite." Her eyes lit up. Not in grief, not in nostalgia, but in pure, unfiltered greed. I could see it even through the camera. She turned in slow circles, taking in the marble floors, the gold-framed art, the rich velvet curtains that still smelled faintly of lavender. I had cleaned every inch of the room myself. I made sure it looked like an invitation, like a secret she'd finally been allowed to access. Jonah left her with a glass of wine and a fake welcome note signed in my handwriting. The moment he shut the door, she started snooping. First the closet, then the drawers. She found the safe behind the bookshelf in less than 10 minutes. She tried the obvious code's first birthdays, anniversaries. Then she gave up and moved to the laptop. The decoy documents on it were good. The kind of good that makes you lean in just a little further, thinking you've stumbled onto something you shouldn't have. Contracts marked confidential, plans for hotel expansions, financial forecasts with 7-digit numbers. And buried in the folders were a few emails written from investors who just needed confirmation of her interest before sending money. She read them all, then smiled. The kind of smile she used to wear when she thought she had the upper hand. I felt nothing, just calm. The kind of calm that comes when you know exactly what the next few days will bring. That night, I didn't message her. I let her stew in her own curiosity. I let her believe she had discovered something she wasn't supposed to see. By morning, she had already replied to one of the fake investor emails. Maya forwarded it to me before I finished my coffee. "She's biting," she said with a grin. "She told them she's working on behalf of Hale Properties and has full signing authority. She even offered to meet them in person to finalize a pitch deck. She's moving faster than I thought," I said, scrolling through the message. "She's in full hustle mode. Classic Lena," Jonah added. "She doesn't just take, she builds a new lie around the thing she stole. Makes it look like she earned it." We let her dig in. For 2 more days, she sent emails, scheduled fake meetings, called real estate contacts, and pitched a business she didn't own. I tracked every message, every keystroke. It wasn't just fraud. It was impersonation. And every step she took made her less careful. I knew what I needed to do next. I told Miles to quietly reach out to a few of our industry contacts. Let them know we were hearing rumors about someone claiming to be me. I didn't mention her name. I didn't have to. By the end of the week, Lena had booked a lunch meeting with 3 high-profile investors at an upscale bistro downtown the Blue Terrace, a place where deals get made and reputations get built or broken. I arrived early, dressed simple but sharp, with Jonah and Maya sitting at nearby tables. We weren't here to make a scene. We were here to let her expose herself. At exactly 12:23, Lena walked in wearing an emerald green dress and her favorite pearls. The investors were already seated. She greeted them with fake humility, acting like she was doing them a favor. I watched her from the corner of the room, sipping water like it was champagne. When she pulled out the forged documents, my name at the top, her signature at the bottom, I knew it was time. I stood up and walked to the table. Her eyes met mine, and for the first time since she landed, I saw fear flicker behind them. "Mom," I said casually. "Didn't expect to see you here." Her mouth opened, then closed again. "Tessa, this is just a lunch?" I offered, sitting down next to her. "With people you just promised stakes in hotels you don't own?" The investors looked confused. "Excuse me, who are you?" "I'm Tessa Bell," I said calmly, "the sole owner of Hale Hospitality. This woman is my mother. She has no authority to represent the company." One of the men, the one in the gray suit, leaned forward. She claimed to have power of attorney. I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. The video loaded instantly. Lena in the master suite taking photos of the documents, trying to open the safe using the laptop. I turned the phone so they could all see. She's been impersonating me for days. "This entire pitch is fabricated." Silence fell over the table. Then the man in gray stood up. "We're done here." The other 2 followed without another word. One of them tossed the forged packet back onto the table. Lena sat frozen. Her mask was gone. All that remained was desperation. "Tessa," she whispered, Why would you do this to me? I leaned in, keeping my voice low and steady. I didn't do this to you. You did this to yourself. I just made sure someone was watching when you did. I walked away before she could respond. I didn't need to hear the excuses. I'd heard them my whole life. That night, she showed up at the estate, mascara smudged, voice cracking with fake remorse. I let her in only because I wanted to see how far she'd go. I was desperate, she said. I thought if I could just show I could help, maybe you'd let me in again. Help? I asked. You emptied my accounts and pretended to be me. You don't help, you take. She dropped the act like flipping a switch. You think this makes you better than me? It doesn't. You're nothing without what Evelyn gave you. No, I said softly. I'm everything because of what you didn't. That broke her. I saw it in the way her shoulders fell, the way her expression cracked. She stood there, smaller than I remembered, suddenly aware of how little power she had left. So what now? She asked, barely above a whisper. I handed her an envelope. Inside was a one-way ticket to a tiny town in Oregon, along with a housing voucher and a job offer as a night shift hotel clerk. Just enough to survive, not enough to scheme. You take the chance, or you take the fall, your choice. She looked down at the ticket, then back at me. For the first time in my life, she didn't argue. She just nodded, quiet, hollow. The next morning, she was gone. Left before sunrise without saying goodbye. I watched the footage later, her dragging her suitcase back out of the house, walking slower than when she arrived. She didn't look back, and neither did I. The house felt different after she left. Not quieter, not colder, just lighter. Like someone had opened all the windows and let out years of stale air. I walked through each room that morning without really knowing why. Maybe to make sure she was really gone. Maybe to remind myself that I was still standing. In the master suite, I paused at the edge of the bed where she'd sat with that smug little smile, thinking she was about to reclaim something she never earned. The closet was untouched, fake jewelry still neatly in the safe, untouched now that the game was over. She hadn't taken anything with her except the envelope. I picked up the glass of wine she left half-finished on the nightstand and dumped it down the sink. That felt symbolic enough. Downstairs, Maya was already brewing coffee, barefoot in leggings like she lived there, which honestly she kind of did now. She's gone, I said as I walked in. Maya didn't ask where. She just handed me a mug and nodded. How do you feel? She asked after a minute. I didn't answer right away because I didn't know. Relieved? Exhausted? Hollow? Probably all of it layered on top of each other like some emotional lasagna. Like I need a nap and a therapist, I said finally. She laughed. In that order? Definitely. Later that day, I met with Miles again, this time to finalize the legal cleanup. There were things to file, signatures to notarize, security locks to reset. Lena had left digital fingerprints on everything she touched, but Miles assured me we had enough evidence to shut her out for good. Technically, you could press charges, he said, sliding a folder across the table. You'd win. There's enough to charge her with fraud, identity theft, attempted misrepresentation. It would stick. I know, I said. But the truth was, I wasn't sure what winning looked like anymore. She was gone. Her plan had unraveled. Her name meant nothing in the business world now. Maybe justice wasn't a courtroom moment with flashing lights. Maybe justice was watching her fade into a life she couldn't scheme her way out of. I'm not looking to destroy her, I said slowly. I just don't want her near anything that matters to me. Miles gave a thoughtful nod. That's fair. Evelyn would have understood that. I paused. What would she have done? He smiled faintly. She would have made her disappear. Quietly, completely. No mess, no drama. Just locked doors and a name removed from the ledger. I nodded. That sounded about right. After the meeting, I drove back to the estate alone. For the first time in weeks, I rolled down the windows and let the wind tangle my hair. It was early fall and the trees were starting to turn, golds and reds softening the edges of the driveway like a painting coming to life. At home, I opened Grandma's journal again. There was a note tucked between the pages I hadn't seen before, written on older parchment in her neat, slanted handwriting. If you're holding this, then you've already made the hardest choice. Now do the brave thing. Rebuild. I didn't cry. I thought I might. But instead, I just sat there on the edge of her bed and whispered, I'm trying. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine. Not to toast or celebrate, but to mark the end of something. Joanna stopped by just before sunset, holding a small cardboard box filled with papers. These came from the old storage unit, he said. Mostly business stuff, but there's some personal things in there too. We sat on the living room floor and went through it together. Inside were old photos, property deeds, letters I'd written to Grandma from college. One envelope was still sealed. I opened it carefully. Inside was a letter addressed to me. Not typed, not formal. Just Grandma's voice on paper. Tessa, people like your mother don't understand value. They only understand ownership. That's why she could never love what she had, only what she could take. But you have the power to build, not just inherit. That's the difference. Use it well. I didn't say anything for a long time after I read it. Jonah just stayed next to me, shoulder brushing mine, not needing to fill the silence. It wasn't until the following week that I decided what to do with the money, or rather, with the legacy. It wasn't just about hotels and numbers anymore. It was about meaning. So I launched the Hale Restoration Fund, quietly, privately, no press releases, just a few small grants to start people who'd been conned by Lena in the past, people who'd lost money or time or trust. Maya and I combed through old email threads, social media posts, even forums where her name had come up in scam complaints. I didn't tell them who I was, just offered help. One by one, I saw it working. A bakery in Phoenix that she'd nearly bankrupted reopened. A teacher who lost her savings got a new start. It wasn't revenge. It was something else. Reclamation. I didn't tell Jonah about the fund at first. Not until one night when we were walking by the lake near the estate, and he asked what I wanted to do next. Make something that can't be stolen, I said. Something good. He looked at me and smiled. You already are. I stopped walking and turned to him. You know what's weird? I don't hate her. I thought I would, but I don't. You outgrew her, he said. That's harder, but it's better. I nodded. Do you think she'll come back? He paused. No, she doesn't have anywhere left to return to. A few weeks later, Miles called. Just wanted to let you know, your mother cashed the housing voucher. Took the night shift job. She's still there? I asked. Quiet town. No complaints. She's invisible now, just like you asked. I didn't respond right away. I stared out the window at the garden. At the soft light spilling over the lawn Grandma had planted herself. I didn't know what to feel. Closure doesn't always feel like a celebration. Sometimes it feels like silence. Like an empty room finally safe to sit in. I walked into the master suite that evening with a box in my arms. I placed the journal on the vanity and lit a single candle next to it. Then I pulled out a sealed envelope addressed to myself. The last one, the one I hadn't opened yet. Inside was a single line written in gold ink. You didn't just survive her, you outlived the lie. That night, I finally slept with the door open. 3 months passed before I heard her voice again. It came through the most unexpected place, an anonymous voicemail. I was sitting on the back porch with my laptop, approving grant applications for the fund, when I saw a missed call from an Idaho number. No name, no contact saved, just a generic 5-second message and a voice I hadn't heard in nearly a season. Tessa, it's me. I never mind. Click. That was it. No apology, no explanation, just the sound of someone unsure whether they still had permission to speak. I stared at the phone for a long time before playing it again. The silence between the words said more than the words themselves. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She wasn't even asking to be heard. She was just reaching out because for the first time in her life, she had nothing to offer. No angle to play, no leverage left to pull. And part of me wanted to delete it without thinking twice. But another part, the part that still believed people could surprise you, even when they've spent their whole lives disappointing you, clicked save instead. I didn't call her back. Not then. I wasn't ready, and I wasn't sure if I ever would be. But the idea stayed with me, persistent and quiet, like a splinter you can't see but still feel every time you move. So I kept going. The Hale Fund was growing faster than I expected. People were donating. Former victims started writing back, sometimes just to say thank you, other times to tell their side of the story. I read each one, every loss, every near miss, every time she'd almost pulled someone else under with her. They didn't sound bitter. They sounded tired, like they'd spent years trying to name something they could never quite explain until now. And in giving them answers, I felt like I was finally writing my own. Jonah stayed close through all of it, not in the way that demanded anything, but in the way that made space for everything. When I worked late, he brought tea. When I forgot to eat, he ordered food. When I got stuck in my head, he let me talk it out without trying to fix me. One night, we sat in the living room watching some old documentary on forgotten cities, and I asked him, "Do you think people like her ever change?" He didn't pause. "I think some people can learn to survive differently. That's not the same thing as changing, but maybe it's close enough." That stayed with me. The idea that survival doesn't always come with transformation, but sometimes it comes with surrender. A few weeks later, I got another call. Same number. This time, she didn't hang up. "Tessa, I don't expect you to call me back. I just wanted to say thank you. The job, it's boring and small and quiet, but no one expects anything from me. It's the first time I haven't had to pretend to be someone. That's strange. I hope you're okay. That's all. I didn't cry, but I also didn't move for a long time after it ended. Not because it hurt, because it didn't. Not anymore. Her voice used to control every room it entered, bending truth and memory until no one remembered what really happened. But now, through a scratchy voicemail, it sounded human, not broken, not healed, just honest. That was new. I played it twice. Then I closed the app and opened the journal again. I had started using the empty pages in the back, not as a diary, but as a place to write things I didn't say out loud. Sometimes letters to myself, sometimes notes to grandma, sometimes just loose thoughts about how hard it is to believe you're okay when you grew up being told you weren't. That night, I wrote this. I don't know if she'll ever be sorry in the way I want her to be, but maybe that doesn't matter. Maybe I'm not here to measure her change. Maybe I'm just here to choose mine. It was 2 weeks later when I booked the flight. Not impulsively, not emotionally, just calmly. I didn't tell Jonah or Maya. I didn't tell Miles. I just packed a weekend bag, printed out the address from the housing voucher, and flew to Idaho. The town was smaller than I expected. 1 main street, 2 stoplights, a diner, a hardware store, and a used bookshop with a cat in the window. I rented a car and drove to the cafe where she worked. It was almost empty when I walked in, just one elderly couple sharing pancakes and a woman on a laptop in the corner. I sat at the counter. She didn't recognize me at first. Her hair was tied back messily, streaks of gray showing at the roots. Her nails were bare, and the circles under her eyes looked permanent. She was refilling sugar canisters when she turned toward me and froze. Her hand stopped. Her lips parted. "Tessa?" I nodded. She came closer, uncertain, hesitant. "Are you here to check if I'm still failing?" "No," I said quietly. "I already know you're not." She swallowed hard. "Why now?" I looked around the place. Clean, modest, real. "Because I had to see it for myself. That you stayed." Her shoulders dropped. Not in defeat. In something closer to release. "I didn't expect you to come." "Neither did I admitted. She poured a cup of coffee and slid it in front of me without asking how I took it. Still remembered. "I didn't call for sympathy," she said. "I know I don't deserve anything. Maybe not," I said. "But you took the ticket. You stayed. You're working. That counts for something." She sat across from me slowly, eyes locked on mine like she was afraid to blink. I've spent most of my life pretending I didn't need anyone. Lying, stealing, chasing things that never filled me. And for the first time, I wake up and there's nothing to chase. Just coffee to pour and bills to pay. And oddly, that feels okay. I nodded. Good. She looked down at her hands. "Do you hate me?" "I did," I said. "I think I had to, but not now." She blinked fast, holding herself together. "Do you think I'll ever earn your trust again?" "No," I said honestly. "But maybe you'll earn your own. That's more important." I slid an envelope across the counter. Inside was something I hadn't planned to give her, but decided to bring anyway. Grandma's mirror. The silver one she kept on her vanity. The one Lena used to try and steal when she thought no one was looking. Her fingers shook as she unwrapped it. "Why?" she whispered. "Because I want you to see who you are now," I said. "Not who you were. Not who you pretended to be. Just this." She looked into the mirror, and for the first time since I arrived, she didn't say a word. She just stared. Her reflection wasn't glamorous. It wasn't proud. It was honest. I stood to leave. "I don't know if I'll come back, but I wanted you to know that you did one thing right." She looked up, eyes shining. "What's that?" I walked toward the door, pausing just before I stepped out into the cold. He finally stopped running. Then I left. No hug, no promises. Just enough. And sometimes, that's what healing looks like. Flying home felt different this time. No tension in my chest, no imaginary scripts running through my head, no weight pressing behind my eyes. Just quiet, the good kind. I watched the clouds shift beneath the plane window and thought about everything that had happened, not just the betrayal or the revenge, but the in-between moments, the pauses, the long silences, the ones that taught me who I really was when no one was watching. When I landed, Jonah was already waiting at the curb, leaning against the car with that calm, steady presence that had become the safest part of my life. He didn't ask questions, just opened the door and let me sit in silence for a while before finally asking, "Was it worth it?" I looked out at the road as we pulled away from the terminal, the lights blurring past us like a timeline being rewound. "Not in the way I expected," I said, But yeah, I think it was. That night, I unpacked slowly. Not just the suitcase, but the memories. I put Grandma's journal back on the shelf, next to the ledger books from the Hale estate, and a photograph of the two of us taken when I was 10, arms around each other in front of the lake house. I placed the silver mirror on the dresser without looking into it. Some things weren't mine to reflect on anymore. I had made peace, not with the past, but with the person I used to be in it. I wasn't trying to fix my mother. I had finally stopped trying to explain her, or excuse her, or wish she'd become someone else. That wasn't healing. That was hoping backwards. What I had now wasn't loud. It didn't come with applause or a clean moral ending. It came in the form of choice. I could breathe. I could walk into a room and not wonder who was going to take something from me. I could look in the mirror and see a woman who survived not just betrayal, but expectation. And somehow I came out softer, not harder. A week later, I hosted a small gathering at the estate. Nothing grand, just a few people who had walked beside me through all of it: Jonah, Maya, a couple of old friends who'd seen the chaos and never turned away. We sat around the patio fire pit as the sun dipped behind the trees, and I told them the full story. Every detail, every twist. I didn't tell it for sympathy or drama. I told it because sometimes saying something out loud makes it stop owning you. When I finished, no one said anything right away. Just the sound of crickets and fire crackling between us. Then Maya reached out and grabbed my hand. "You broke the cycle," she said. "That's not small." I nodded, feeling it settle inside me like something real. Like truth. After everyone left, Jonah stayed behind to help clean up. We walked the garden path under soft string lights, past the roses Grandma planted herself. I stopped and looked at him. "You think it's okay that I didn't destroy her?" He didn't answer right away. "I think destruction is easy. What you did? That took guts." I exhaled slowly. "She might never be better." "Maybe not," he said. "But she's different. Because of you." I thought about that. About how much effort I had spent trying not to become her. About how afraid I used to be that pain was inherited, like a family recipe no one asked for. But standing there, in a garden built by someone who chose better long before me, I realized something important. I hadn't just avoided becoming her. I had become someone she never had the strength to be. The next morning, I visited the Hale property's newest hotel site, a lakeside retreat we'd started developing quietly. Not luxury, not flashy, just peaceful, honest, the way Grandma would have wanted it. I met with the architect, reviewed the sketches, and made one request: include a library room. Small, personal, filled with the kind of books that make people feel seen. I wanted every guest who walked in to feel like they mattered, like their story was worth reading too. The next month, I finalized the expansion of the Hale Fund. We opened applications nationwide. I made sure we prioritized stories that mirrored mine: financial manipulation, betrayal masked as love, stolen futures rebuilt from scratch. We partnered with therapists, financial counselors, legal aid teams. We didn't just offer checks, we offered tools. Because real justice doesn't stop at exposure, it starts at rebuilding. One morning, I received a letter, handwritten, no return address, but I knew the handwriting. Inside was a single page. "Tessa, I've been sober for 43 days. The night shift is still hard, but I've stopped trying to make it easy. I just try to do it well. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know I'm still here, still trying. Maybe that's all I can offer. Love, Mom." I folded the letter carefully and tucked it inside the journal, not for closure, for record. Because the truth is, some stories don't end. They just quiet down. That's okay. I no longer needed a clean ending to feel whole. A few weeks later, I sat on the dock at the lake house, legs crossed, fingers trailing through the water. The wind was warm. The sun was soft. I was alone, but not lonely. There's a difference. I thought about Grandma, about how she never forced me to forgive or forget. She just wanted me to live, fully, honestly. I think she knew that pain doesn't disappear, it transforms. If you let it, it becomes something useful, something you can give to someone else. Not like a wound, but like a map. A reminder that you made it out. That night, I wrote my last note in the back of her journal. "You gave me the tools. I built the door. I walked through it." Then I closed the book. Not to forget, but to move forward. Because at some point, the story shifts. It stops being about what was done to you. It starts being about what you choose to do with it. And me, I chose to grow things, to build, to remember without reliving, to let go without pretending it never happened. I chose peace not because it was easy, but because it was finally mine to keep. And that was enough. Story 2. I never thought I'd return to Grandpa Henry's farmhouse like this. Life has a strange way of pulling you back to places you thought you'd left behind, especially when someone you trust betrays you. It all started on a regular Saturday afternoon. I was sitting in my Colorado Springs office, just finishing a research report on water-saving methods for farms. That's when my phone buzzed. I almost didn't pick it up. But then I saw the name Henry, my younger brother. We hadn't spoken much in the past few years. He was always busy with some new business idea, and I was always caught up in my work as a scientist. Still, something told me to answer. Henry's voice came through the phone, sounding far too calm and casual. "Hey, Kelly, just thought I'd let you know I sold the farm." He said it like it was no big deal. I blinked, confused. "Wait, what? You sold the farm? Grandpa's farm?" "Yeah," he said proudly. "Got $5 million for it." My heart dropped. That farmhouse wasn't just land and buildings. It was our childhood summers. It was Grandpa Henry's whole life's work. "You sold it without even telling me?" I asked, trying to stay calm. Henry sighed, clearly annoyed. "Come on, Kelly. You haven't been there in years. You're too busy living your scientist's life in Colorado Springs. The farm was just sitting there. I did what needed to be done." I clenched the phone tightly in my hand. "You had no right to sell it." He laughed, a cold, sharp laugh. "Actually, I did. Grandpa made me the executor. That means I get to make the decisions." I was speechless. My brain tries to process his words. Then I asked, "Where's the money?" There was a long pause. Then he said with a chuckle, "Well, I spent it." My whole body went cold. "What do you mean you spent it?" "Joyce needed it," he said. Her business was struggling. She had this amazing opportunity, and she needed cash quickly. So I helped her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He had sold a $15 million property for just $5 million, and he spent every last cent on his girlfriend's business. I canceled my business trip right away and rushed home. I was burning with anger. I had no idea what I would say to him when I got there. But when I finally arrived, something unexpected happened. I smiled. You see, the farmhouse he sold wasn't a real family estate. Grandpa Henry was a clever man. Years ago, he had quietly bought more land and built a second hidden property, one that only I knew about. The one Henry sold was just the older part. Henry thought he had ruined everything, but really, he had no idea what he had missed. It felt like I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened, and I could hardly believe what I had just heard. Henry had sold our grandfather's farm for half of what it was worth and used all the money on his girlfriend Joyce's business. "She needed it more than you," Henry said, trying to defend himself. I was shocked. "You sold our family's land. That place meant everything to us." Henry didn't seem to care. "Come on, Kelly. You've got your life all figured out. You've got a great job. Your research projects and your big career. You don't need that old farm like I do. What's the big deal?" I couldn't take it anymore. I hung up the call without saying another word. If I kept talking, I might have said something I'd regret. My hands were shaking with anger. Within an hour, I had booked the next flight to Los Angeles, California on the flight. I couldn't stop thinking. My thoughts were spinning. How could Henry do something like this? I always knew he was careless and impulsive. But this wasn't just a bad decision. It felt like betrayal. Like he had stolen something that wasn't his to take. But the longer I sat with my thoughts, the more my anger turned into something stronger. Determination. Henry thought he could get away with this. He thought no one would question him. But he had forgotten something important. Grandpa Henry was a wise man. I had a feeling he saw this coming. When I reached the farm, my heart sank. The place looked abandoned and sad. Grass had grown wild. Fences were falling apart, and the buildings looked worn down. Still, memories came rushing back. Early mornings feeding horses, the smell of fresh soil after it rained, and Grandpa's warm laugh from the porch. Now all of that was gone. Sold like it didn't matter. I needed answers, and I knew just who to ask. Douglas Adams, Grandpa Henry's lawyer for over 32 years. I met him the next morning in his San Diego office. He looked at me as I walked in, his sharp eyes calm but watchful. "I was wondering when you'd come," he said, motioning for me to sit. I didn't waste time. Henry sold the farm without asking me. He says he had the right. Douglas sighed and tapped a thick folder on his desk. "Yes, I got the sale notice yesterday. So that's it. He wins," I asked. Feeling helpless, Douglas gave a small smile. "Not necessarily. Did you ever read your grandfather's full estate documents?" I read the will. It left everything to both of us. Henry was named the executor. Douglas nodded. "That's true. But your grandfather was very cautious." He slid the folder toward me. 3 weeks before he passed, he filed a special amendment. I opened the file slowly. The first page caught my attention. Character clause. Douglas's face turned serious. Henry loved Henry but didn't fully trust him, so he added a rule. If either of you tries to sell the farm without the other's agreement, ownership automatically and permanently goes to the other person. My eyes widened. Henry had tried to cheat me, but he had just handed the farm over to me. I blinked, trying to take in what Douglas had just said. Are you saying the farm is mine? Douglas leaned back in his chair, calm and sure. Yes, Kelly. The sale is void because of your grandfather's special clause. The farm now legally belongs to you. Relief and surprise washed over me at the same time. I could hardly believe it. All this time, I thought everything was lost. But now it was mine. Henry doesn't know about this, does he? I asked, almost whispering. Douglas shook his head. No, and I suggest we don't tell him just yet. Not until we meet with him officially. Let's do this the right way in a legal setting. I leaned back in my seat, still trying to understand everything Grandpa Henry had known. He had seen the way Henry behaved, his selfish choices, and his greed. And he had planned ahead to protect the farm. My hands curled into fists. So what happens now? Douglas checked his watch. Now, you prepare yourself. Once Henry finds out, he won't take it well. He'll try to fight it. And something tells me he'll make a scene. That evening, I drove back to the farmhouse. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the wild grass and empty fields. I stood there in silence, taking it all in. This land wasn't just dirt and buildings. It was my grandfather's life, work, his love, his passion, everything he believed in. And Henry had tried to sell it all for a quick payout, and his girlfriend's failing business. I took out my phone. Tomorrow Henry would find out the truth. He thought he had won, but he had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I woke up early. My mind was full of thoughts about what was about to happen. I knew Henry wouldn't handle it well. He had no clue that his so-called success was about to fall apart. By 9 a.m., I was sitting across from Douglas again in his office. Everything was set for a legal meeting. Henry and his lawyer were expected any minute. Douglas looked calm, like he had done this many times before. But I could tell this case was personal. Henry showed up 20 minutes late. Of course. He walked in with that same smug smile, wearing a fancy suit that he probably bought with the money he got from the farm sale. Joyce followed behind, looking bored and irritated. She didn't want to be there. His lawyer looked young, nervous, and clearly overwhelmed by it all. The moment Henry saw me, he smirked. Wow. Kelly didn't think you'd care enough to show up. I didn't respond to the jab. I just pointed to the chair across from me. Sit down, Henry. He dropped into the chair with a loud sigh. Let's make this fast. I've got better things to do. Douglas ignored his rude tone and cleared his throat. Henry, the first believe you already know Kelly has serious concerns about the sale of your grandfather's farm. Henry rolled his eyes and leaned back. We've already talked about this. But little did he know, everything was about to change. I was the executor, Henry said, his voice full of pride. I had every legal right to sell the farm. Douglas stayed calm and slowly slid a paper across the table. Actually, you didn't. Henry frowned but picked up the paper anyway as he read it. The proud look on his face disappeared. His smile faded, and his hands gripped the paper tighter. For the first time in years, I saw something I never expected from him. Real fear. What is this? He asked, his voice shaky, not confident anymore. Douglas rested his hands together and said, That's the updated deed your grandfather filed just 3 weeks before he passed away. It has something called a character clause. It says if one grandchild tries to sell the farm without the other's agreement, the ownership will automatically go to the one who was left out. Henry's face went pale. Now, that's not possible. Oh, but it is, I said firmly. The moment you signed the deal to sell the farm, you gave up your rights. The farm belongs to me now. Henry slammed the paper on the table. This is a setup. Grandpa wouldn't do this to me. Douglas stayed calm and said, Henry Carter knew both of you well. He trusted Kelly to protect the farm, and he knew you might act selfishly. So, yes, he prepared for this. Henry quickly turned to his young lawyer. Do something. The lawyer shifted in his seat, looking nervous. Legally, the updated document is valid. The sale doesn't count anymore. Joyce, sitting beside Henry, crossed her arms and said sharply, So what now? The money's gone. We already spent it. That's not my problem, I said coldly. Henry's face turned red with anger. He stood up fast, pushing his chair back. You can't just take everything from me. I stared him in the eye. I didn't take it from you. You gave it away. The room fell silent. The truth had hit him hard. He had lost everything. Douglas quietly slid another document forward. There's one more thing. As the executor of the estate, you were supposed to protect your grandfather's wishes. But by selling the farm without Kelly's agreement, you broke those duties. He tapped the document. As of right now, you're no longer the executor. Henry looked at the paper like it was the end of the world. You're joking. No, I said, leaning closer. I'm in charge now. Suddenly, Joyce stood up and grabbed Henry's arm. Henry, we need to go. But Henry didn't move. He just kept staring at the document, frozen in place, finally realizing he had lost it all. I could tell what was going on in Henry's mind. He had lost it all. The farm, the money, and the control. He thought he had. But Douglas wasn't finished yet. He picked up one more file from the table. There's one last thing, Douglas said. Since the sale of the farm is invalid, that means you have to pay back all the money you received from it. Henry swallowed hard. I don't have the money. I leaned back in my chair and looked straight at him. Then we have a big problem, don't we? Joyce, clearly angry now, pulled on Henry's arm. Henry, let's go. They started walking toward the door, but before they could leave, Douglas spoke again. Oh, and Henry, he added. Henry stopped and turned around slowly, his shoulders stiff. If you try to fight this in court, Douglas said in a calm but serious voice, we'll have to do a full audit of the estate. That means we'll check every single thing you've done with the money since you became executor. Henry's jaw tightened. He understood exactly what that meant. Every shady deal, every dollar he secretly gave to Joyce's failing business. It would all come to light. He didn't say a word. He just stormed out. His face was red with frustration. Joyce followed behind her heels, clicking loudly on the floor as the door shut behind them. I finally let out a long breath. It was over. Or at least I thought it was. That night, I sat on Grandfather Henry's old porch, staring out at the land under the cool California night. The air was still and everything was quiet. I should have felt peace, maybe even joy, but I didn't. Something didn't feel right. Henry was careless. Yes, but not dumb. He had to know this could happen. He had to know Grandpa might have left something in place to stop him. So why did he go through with it? Why was he in such a hurry? Then my phone buzzed. A message from Henry. We need to talk. I stared at the text, my stomach twisting. This wasn't over. I looked at the message for a long time. A part of me wanted to ignore it. I had already won. The farm was legally mine. Henry had lost everything, but I knew my brother too well. He never walked away without a backup plan. Finally, I replied, meet me at the farmhouse in 1 hour. By the time I got there, the sky was dark and the air smelled like rain was coming. The fences were still broken, the land still messy and overgrown. The farm had been left alone for too long. Henry arrived 10 minutes late. His SUV headlights cut through the shadows. He stepped out slowly. He looked different, tired, maybe even worried. Joyce wasn't with him. This time, it was just us. He kept his hands in his pockets and avoided my eyes. You got what you wanted. I leaned on the porch railing. Did I? Henry gave a short, bitter laugh. Don't start with a speech, Kelly. You think you're the hero here? He waved his hand toward the land. You left. You had your big career, your research, and your perfect life. I was the one who stayed, Henry said quietly. I was the one who took care of everything. I looked at him carefully. Not angry, just tired of the lies. You didn't take care of anything, Henry. You sold Grandpa's farm just to get some quick cash. Then you spent the money like it meant nothing. His jaw tightened. I was trying to build something. I crossed my arms. And where is it now? He didn't answer. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. Something in my stomach twisted. I could feel something deeper was going on. Henry, this isn't just about the farm, is it? He looked away, eyes moving quickly like he didn't want to meet mine. And for the first time in years, I saw something real. Fear. I stepped closer. How bad is it? Henry ran a hand through his hair. Clearly stressed. I borrowed money from Grandpa's other accounts. My heart dropped. What did you say? He let out a shaky breath. The tax accounts, the maintenance funds, the savings, everything. I took money from all of it. I thought I could pay it back before anyone noticed. His voice started to shake. But the investment failed. The developer went bankrupt. And now he let out a weak, broken laugh. Now it's all gone. I felt sick to my stomach. I could barely speak. How much? His voice was barely a whisper. $750,000. The world felt like it was spinning. I pressed my fingers to my forehead, trying to stay calm, trying to think. So that's why you were so desperate to sell the farm? Henry nodded, eyes full of regret. I thought I could fix everything before anyone found out. I closed my eyes and saw Joyce. He gave a cold, bitter laugh. She left, took what little money was left, and ran. The second she realized I had nothing more to give. A long silence followed. I should have walked away. I should have told Henry this was his problem to fix. But then I thought of Grandpa Henry, how he always believed in giving people second chances. And even after everything, Henry was still my brother. I pulled out my phone and called Douglas. He picked up on the second ring. "I need to see you," I said, "right now." An hour later, Henry and I sat in Douglas's office. Douglas is always calm, didn't even look surprised when I told him everything. He just opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder. "Your grandfather knew something like this could happen," Douglas said, sliding the file toward me. "So he made a plan." I flipped through the pages. My heart was beating fast. Inside the file were insurance papers, safety plans, and legal documents. Things Grandpa Henry had put in place a long time ago before he passed away. Douglas tapped one of the documents. "This is an insurance policy that covers mistakes made with the estate's money. If we use it, it can help recover up to $900,000. Henry let out a breath like someone had hit him in the stomach. "So we're saved." Douglas's eyes narrowed. "Not exactly. There are rules." Henry tensed. "Of course there are." Douglas leaned forward. "First, you must sign a paper saying you admit to misusing the state's money. You have to officially take responsibility." Henry's body stiffened. "And if I don't?" Douglas's face stayed serious. "Then Kelly will have no choice but to take legal action against you. That would lead to a full check of all the estate's money records." He paused, then added, "And with the proof we have, it's very possible you could be charged with fraud." Henry's face went pale. "Fraud? Yes," Douglas said calmly. "And that could mean jail time." Henry's hand shook as he rubbed his face. "What else?" Douglas folded his hands. "You'll have to attend financial counseling, and you'll pay for it yourself. Also, you won't be allowed to be involved with the estate ever again." Henry looked at me, his voice softer now. "And you're okay with all this?" I looked him in the eye. "I don't want to see you in jail, Henry, but I won't cover up what you did. You have to face the results of your choices." For a moment, he didn't move. Then slowly, he nodded. "Okay." Douglas pushed the paper across the table. Henry picked up the pen with shaking hands and signed it. And just like that, it was done outside. The night was quiet. We stood by Henry's car, looking at the lights of the city in the distance. He stared at the skyline and said softly, "I don't know what to do now." I waited before answering. "You start over." Henry gave a weak laugh. "How?" I looked at him closely. He was still the brother I had grown up with, the one who had lost his way, chasing the wrong dreams. "The farm still needs work," I said after a moment. "You could help." He turned to me, surprised. "You'd let me?" I nodded. "You're still my brother, Henry. But this isn't about money anymore. If you want a second chance, you'll have to earn it." He didn't answer right away, but after a long pause, he nodded. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to fix what had been broken. The days after that meeting with Douglas were heavy. The air felt thick with silence, and both of us carried the weight of everything that had happened. I had spent so many years being angry at Henry. I truly believed he would never change. So seeing him now quiet, unsure, and no longer acting like he knew everything felt strange. We stood together on Grandpa Henry's farm, looking at the tall weeds, broken fences, and the old house that once used to be full of life. "I hardly recognize it," Henry said softly. I glanced at him. "Well, that's what happens when someone tries to sell a place instead of taking care of it." Henry let out a deep sigh but didn't say anything back. He wasn't arguing anymore. For the first time in a long while, I saw something new in him change. Over the next week, we worked side by side. We cleared out the old barn, fixed broken fences, and looked at all the damage caused by years of being ignored. Henry wasn't used to this kind of work. At first, he struggled. He wasn't strong with tools or farm work, but he came back every morning. And what surprised me most, he never complained. One evening, after a long day of fixing the porch steps, I found Henry sitting quietly on the front steps of the house. The sun was setting, and the golden light made the fields glow. It was the same view Grandpa used to sit and enjoy every evening. "I used to hate this place," Henry said, his voice quiet and unsure. "I thought it was holding me back. I thought it reminded me of everything. I didn't want to be." I sat down beside him, wiping the sweat off my forehead, and now he was silent for a while. Then he sighed. "Now I think I understand. Grandpa wasn't trying to trap us. He was trying to give us something that mattered." I nodded, watching the wind blow through the tall grass. He was always thinking 5 steps ahead. Henry gave a small chuckle, but it wasn't really a happy one. "Yeah, and I never thought further than the next dollar." The next few months became a routine of hard work and quiet change. Henry kept showing up. I didn't think he would last, but he proved me wrong. I expected him to quit or walk away the moment things got hard, but he stayed. He learned how to repair farm tools, how to plant crops properly, and how to care for the land, just like Grandpa had always done. And slowly, I realized he wasn't just doing this to fix things between us. He was doing it for himself, too. One afternoon, we stood inside the cleaned-up barn. The smell of fresh hay filled the air. Henry wiped his hands on his jeans and looked around. "It actually looks like a real farm again," he said. "That's because it is," I replied. He took a deep breath and nodded. "Yeah, it feels different now." I looked at Henry closely. "You seem different." He paused, then gave a small nod. "Yeah." For the first time, I believed him. 1 year after everything had gone wrong, we held a small ceremony to honor Grandpa Henry. We invited neighbors, old friends, and the few people in town who had known him well. Henry stood beside me as we revealed a memorial plaque near the farmhouse. The plaque had simple words written on it. "Henry Carter, a man who built more than land as the sun set over the farm." I realized something important. Grandpa had planned all of this. Not just the farm, not just the money, but us. He knew that Henry and I would never truly understand each other unless something forced us to work together. He'd added rules and safety nets, knowing Henry's weaknesses, but he hadn't given up on him. Instead, he left a way for Henry to change. And in the end, Henry had taken that chance. Later that night, when everyone had gone home, I found Henry sitting on the porch, looking up at the stars. "Still thinking about going back to Los Angeles?" I asked. He gave a small smirk. "Nah. Turns out I like the quiet." I sat beside him, the cool night air wrapping around us. Everything felt peaceful after a while. Henry asked, "Do you think Grandpa knew this would happen?" I thought about it for a moment before replying, "Yeah, I think he knew exactly what he was doing." Henry let out a quiet sigh and smiled a little. "Yeah, me too." And for the first time in a very long time, we sat there. Not as enemies, not as people fighting over the past, but as family. Story 3. My name is Linda Smith. I'm 29 years old, and I have a younger sister named Sarah who is 23. This is the story of how our family fell apart, but it's also a story about how we started to heal again. Right now, I'm sitting at my desk at work staring at my computer screen. It shows a list of bank transactions. No matter how many times I read about the large amount of money that was taken out, I still can't believe it's real. My hands are shaking. I feel a mix of anger and sadness deep inside. On my desk is a family photo. In the picture, my parents, Sarah and I, are all smiling. That photo used to bring me comfort, but now it just makes me feel worse. I never thought our family would end up like this. On the outside, we seemed like a normal middle-class family. My dad, Peter, worked as a site supervisor for a local construction company. He was organized and skilled, so people at work trusted and respected him. My mom, Ashley, worked as an office assistant at an elementary school. She was active in the PTA and liked by many people in our neighborhood. We lived in a small house in the suburbs with our golden retriever, Cooper, on weekends. We went for family picnics, and during holidays we traveled to nearby places for short vacations. It was the kind of life many families have. My dad enjoyed using the barbecue grill in our yard. He often invited neighbors over for small parties. My mom liked to bake apple pies, and whenever the sweet smell filled our home, it made us all feel warm and happy. But behind that happy image, there were always little things going on that we didn't talk about. Looking back, I think it all started when I was in elementary school. From a young age, I took on the role of the responsible older daughter. It felt natural for me, like something I was just meant to do. I was often chosen as the class leader and earned the trust of my teachers. I always finished my homework on time and got top marks on my tests. In middle school, I became the student council president and also the captain of the swimming team. We even won some district tournaments. When I was 16, I started working part-time at a fast food restaurant on weekends. I wanted to earn my own pocket money. The first thing I bought with my paycheck was a beautiful scarf for my mom's birthday. But her reaction surprised me. She said, "Thank you, but you didn't need to spend your money on this." Her words made me feel like there was a wall between us. On the other hand, Sarah was like the star of our family. She was outgoing, cheerful, and made friends easily. Her grades were just average, but her happy nature brought her lots of friends. Our house was always full of energy because her friends often came over. Our parents gave Sarah what I can only describe as too much love. They gave her almost everything she asked for. One thing I remember clearly is how different our birthdays were. Sarah always had big parties. The yard was filled with balloons, and many of her classmates came to celebrate. There was a big homemade cake and piles of gifts. My birthdays, in comparison, were simple. I was often told, "You're older now," as if that meant I didn't need anything special. When I turned 13, I asked for a bright red bicycle. Many of my classmates were riding bikes to school, and I wanted one too. But my parents said it was too expensive and instead gave me study guides. 3 years later, when Sarah wanted the same kind of red bike, they bought it for her right away. She's still young and needs a safe way to travel, they explained. I still clearly remember something that happened when I was 17. I'd been saving money for over 7 months to buy a new gaming console. I worked extra hours on weekends, packed my own lunches to save money, and put in a lot of effort to reach my goal. When I told my parents about the gaming console I had saved up for, they replied casually, "Oh, we already bought that for Sarah last week. You can just share it with her." They said it like it was totally normal. 12-year-old Sarah, who had no idea how I felt, was super excited. She quickly took over the brand new console. Whenever I tried to use it, she would say, "I'm playing now. Wait for your turn." In the end, the money I had worked so hard to save was put into a fund for my education instead. But strangely, I didn't feel angry at my parents back then. If anything, I thought those experiences made me stronger. I learned how good it felt to reach my goals through hard work, and I also understood the value of being financially independent. I did well in high school and later studied finance in college. My parents used part of my savings to help with my tuition, but they didn't pay for everything. So I earned scholarships and moved into a college dorm. I balanced part-time jobs with my studies and kept working toward my future. During college, I worked at the library and also tutored students on weekends from early morning to late at night. I managed both my job and my studies in a non-stop routine. Still, I never lost my love for learning about finance. In my investment classes, I often got the best grades, and my professors would say, "You have a bright future ahead." While I was busy with my demanding life in college, Sarah, who is now in middle school, was doing great at home with all the support from our parents. Whenever I came home on weekends, the living room was full of Sarah's friends. The smell of Mom's fresh cookies and brownies filled the house, along with the sound of happy middle school girls laughing. One moment that really stuck with me was when Sarah joined the school drama club. She got the lead role in Snow White, which was going to be performed at the school festival. Our parents immediately signed her up for a professional acting class and spent a lot of money on her costume. Dad even took time off work to build the stage props, and Mom drove Sarah to her rehearsals every day on weekends. She practiced Sarah's lines with her. If Sarah wanted to hang out at the mall with friends, Mom happily drove her and gave her plenty of money to spend. Her room slowly turned into something that looked like a mini clothing shop full of new clothes and accessories. When it came to school, even if Sarah got low scores on tests, our parents didn't scold her. They would just say, "It's not a big deal." But when Sarah suggested a school fundraising project or joined local cleanup events, our parents proudly said, "We're so happy she cares about others." One time when Sarah failed her math midterm and scored below passing marks, our parents quickly hired a private tutor to help her. When I offered to help Sarah with her studies, my parents kindly said, "No, you're already busy with your own work, right?" They told me. Later, one of Dad's coworkers' kids started coming over twice a week to tutor Sarah for Sarah's 14th birthday. Our parents threw a huge party. The backyard was decorated with pink and white balloons, and there was a custom-made cake from a professional baker right in the middle of the table. They invited all her classmates, along with some friends she had met at her tutoring center. The gift table was full of expensive presents, including the newest smartphone and a fancy designer handbag, things I couldn't even dream of having. I watched the whole scene while taking a short break from working on a university project. My feelings were mixed. I loved my sister very much, but I couldn't ignore how different things were for us. Sarah stood there like a princess, glowing with joy and fully enjoying the love our parents gave her. She smiled so brightly, as if everything she received was simply normal. While I worked part-time at the library every weekend, Sarah was out watching movies with her friends or going shopping. When I saw her posts on social media, I would often think about how different my own middle school days were. It surprised me how two sisters raised by the same parents could have such completely different lives. After finishing college, I got a job as an analyst at a big investment bank. By the time I was 23, I was financially independent and living alone in a small apartment. Most days I went to work at 8 in the morning and didn't come home until after 11 at night. But the good salary made it worth it. My job was to study new companies and write reports to help investors make smart choices. My bosses gave me high praise, and by my third year, they trusted me with big projects. Even on weekends, I went to training sessions and kept studying to earn special finance certificates. Meanwhile, Sarah had joined a local state university. She chose to study communications. Her college life looked like something out of a teen movie. She joined clubs, went to parties, and traveled to other countries during summer break, with our parents paying for everything. While I was building my own life from scratch, I tried my best to stay close with my family. I visited home once a month, ate meals with them, and listened to Sarah talk about her college life. Dad was still really into gardening, and Mom kept herself busy by helping out with local community work on the outside. Everything between us looked fine, but deep down something didn't feel right. This quiet tension continued for years. Around that time, I started noticing a change in how my parents talked about my job before. They didn't seem very interested in my work, but suddenly they began making comments I didn't expect. Whenever they asked about work, I shared updates honestly. I told them about my promotions and the awards I had received. But instead of being happy for me, they always replied with things like, "You're working so much, but when are you getting married?" At the same time, Sarah was having a tough time finding a job after college. Whenever she talked about how hard it was, Mom would comfort her with kind words like, "You're doing your best," or "I know the perfect job is waiting for you." Looking back, I wonder if seeing Sarah struggle made my parents feel the need to bring me down a little. That spring, Sarah finally graduated from college and got a job at an event planning company. I was truly happy for her. To celebrate, I bought her the newest laptop she had wanted for a long time. It cost almost 4 months of my salary, but I wanted to give her something special to start her new life. Sarah was super excited and thankful for the gift, but my parents' reaction caught me off guard. They said, "You didn't need to buy something so expensive. Are you trying to show off?" Their words hurt me. I had given the gift from my heart, but they misunderstood my reason and made it sound negative. Then one day I got a call from Mom. I was walking through the business district on a nice spring afternoon when I answered the phone. She sounded very excited. "Linda, I have wonderful news," she said cheerfully. "What happened?" I asked. "Sarah is engaged," she announced. I was shocked. I knew Sarah had a boyfriend, but I didn't know anything about them getting married. Mom went on to explain that the man worked at a local real estate company and that they had met through church. She was thrilled and said, "We've already prepared the perfect gift for her." "That's great," I replied politely. I didn't think much of it, since it wasn't unusual for my parents to do something big for Sarah. Then came the part that froze me. "Yes," Mom continued. "We took $250,000 from your account using your debit card. It's for Sarah's wedding." When I heard those words, it felt like my whole world suddenly stopped. The warm spring air and the noise of the street around me faded away. "What? What did you just say?" I asked, shocked. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. Standing in the middle of the busy office area, I felt my legs start to shake. "The money's already been spent," Mom said in a cheerful voice, like she was giving me good news. "We found the perfect wedding dress and already paid the deposit for the wedding hall. The planner said the date would get booked fast, so we made the decision right away." I didn't know what to say. Mom started listing how she had used my savings like it was no big deal, just like talking about the weather. She said the dress was $10,000, the hall deposit was $8,000, and another $2,000 was for the decorations. She kept going, doing the math out loud. Then she added, "I found her pen in the notebook in your desk drawer. It said, 'For emergencies.' And Sarah's wedding is an emergency, right?" "Yes." I had written down my pen and hidden it in a drawer, only to use it in real emergencies, like an accident or a serious health issue. I never thought my parents would find it and use it without asking me. "Mom, this is illegal," I said, my voice shaking. "You used my money without asking me? That's a crime." I stopped walking past people on the street, but I couldn't move. My head was spinning and I could hardly breathe. "Oh, don't be so dramatic," Mom replied with a light laugh. That laugh hurt even more than her words. "We're family, aren't we?" she said. "A wedding only happens once, and anyway, everything's already paid for. If we cancel now, we'll lose even more money." I was completely shocked. Each word from her felt like a sharp stab to my heart. Trying to stay calm, I said, "This is wrong. Every penny must be returned." Then, before she could say anything else, I ended the call. This wasn't just about the money. It was about all the years of being treated unfairly. It was about my trust being broken. It felt like they didn't see me, like I didn't matter. After I hung up, I went into the restroom at my office and cried for what felt like forever. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I saw tears running down my cheeks. I looked completely broken. That $250,000 had taken me 4 years to save. I had worked long hours from early morning until late at night. I gave up weekends, skipped small comforts, and worked harder than ever to save that money. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept tossing and turning, replaying the conversation with Mom again and again in my head. My chest felt tight, like something heavy was pressing down on it. As I lay there, My eyes landed on the family photo hanging on the wall of my apartment. Memories of Christmas dinners, family trips, and birthday parties came rushing back like a slideshow. What once felt like happy times now felt sad and filled with bitterness. The next morning, just before I left for work, my phone rang. It was Dad. The sound of my phone ringing so early, just as the sun was rising, made my heart race. I hadn't even had my coffee yet. "Linda, I spoke to your mother," Dad said. His voice sounded colder than usual in the background. I could hear the sound of the lawnmower. He never skipped his yard work, even when he was upset. "Why are you making such a big deal out of this?" he asked, like I was the one causing all the trouble. "Are you really saying the same thing as Mom?" I asked, shocked. I looked out my window and watched people rushing to work. "This is a crime," I said. "Using my money without asking me is illegal." "You're overreacting." "Dad," he cut in, his voice sounding just like when he used to scold me as a kid. "We're family. You should support your sister," I replied, trying to stay calm. I already gave Sarah a laptop as a gift when she started her job, but that was my choice. It's not the same as taking my money without asking. I was on a crowded train and trying to keep my voice low so no one around me could hear. Still, my voice shook. "When did you become so cold?" Dad asked. His voice was filled with disappointment. His words felt like a sharp sting. "You weren't like this before. The Linda I knew wouldn't act this way." Something inside me broke. All the feelings I had pushed down for years came rushing out like a dam bursting dot. "I've always worked hard on my own. You and Mom never helped me the way you helped Sarah. I've done everything by myself," I said, trying not to cry. "Are you really bringing up all that again?" he said, clearly annoyed. I could tell by his tone. Suddenly, the sound of the lawnmower stopped. "You need to stop comparing yourself to your sister." After he hung up, I couldn't stop the tears from falling before I even got to the office. I ran to the restroom to fix my makeup. The face looking back at me in the mirror looked tired and worn out. In that moment, it really hit me. My parents didn't understand how I felt at all. Later that afternoon, I called the bank after going through the transaction history. It was clear my parents had used my pen to take out the money. I explained everything to the bank, and the staff spoke kindly. But they told me that since the correct PIN was used, it didn't count as unauthorized access. Still, I didn't want to give up that weekend. After thinking long and hard, I decided to report the incident to the police. On my way to the state police station, I walked past a park where I used to go with my parents when I was a child. A photo from one of those days still hangs in their living room. The difference between those happy memories and what was happening now felt too painful to bear. This decision wasn't made quickly or out of anger. The night before, I had sat out on my apartment balcony, staring at the quiet city and the starry sky. I had thought deeply about my life and the choices I had made. I realized this wasn't just about money. It was about self-respect. I wanted to be treated with fairness and dignity. As I got closer to the police station, I felt a wave of doubt. I paused at the stops, and my eyes landed on a cross on the church across the street. It looked like the same one at the church I used to go to with my parents when I was young. I stood there for a moment, unsure. Then I took a deep breath and stepped forward. When I opened the heavy door, I found myself in a quiet reception area. A police officer in uniform looked at me kindly and asked, "What can I do for you?" Hearing those words gave me a small feeling of comfort. "I'd like to report that my family took money from my account without my permission." I said my voice was shaking, but inside I could feel a small strength growing inside the station. I explained everything to a young female officer. My hands were shaking from nervousness, but she listened carefully. Her face was serious, and she wrote down everything I said. She nodded from time to time and gave me a warm, understanding look. She told me family-related money problems like this aren't rare, but that's exactly why it's important to take them seriously. Just because someone is family doesn't mean it's okay to break the law. The police treated my case seriously and said they would question my parents as they wrote up the report. I sat on one of the hard chairs in the station, lost, and thought, what would my parents say? How would Sarah react? What would happen to their reputation in the neighborhood? My mind filled with worry after worry. I got a call saying that a police car had arrived at my parents' house outside my window. The sun was going down, and the streetlights were starting to turn on one by one. I imagined my parents in their living room, shocked to see a police officer at their door. Just thinking about it made my chest feel tight, but I reminded myself there is no going back now. After the police got involved, things moved quickly. My parents were questioned because they were suspected of fraud. The case ended up being handled in civil court. The court decided that my parents had to pay back the full $250,000 they had taken from my account without permission. They were very upset and fought back. "We don't have that kind of money. It's impossible to repay." They said it as if I was a cold-hearted daughter who didn't deserve their love. Dad, who was only a few years away from retiring, refused to take out any loans. Mom cried and said, "How could you do this to your own family?" But what really surprised me was how Sarah reacted. Even though she was busy getting ready for her wedding, she came to see me at my office. "Linda, I'm so sorry," she said with tears in her eyes. "This all happened because of me." Sarah admitted that our parents were wrong and said she felt bad for being part of it without knowing. Her fiancé also understood the situation and said they would slowly help repay the money together. I was deeply touched by how honest and kind Sarah was. Even though I was still hurt by how unfairly I'd been treated for years, I knew that anger was meant for our parents, not for Sarah. "This isn't your fault, Sarah. It's about what Mom and Dad did," I told her. We hugged each other, talked about our feelings, and slowly started to rebuild the bond between us that had been broken for so long. But with my parents, things got worse. Even though they promised to pay the money back in monthly payments, they didn't keep their word. Instead, they began telling lies to relatives and neighbors, making me look like a heartless daughter and pretending to be the victims. In the end, I made a hard decision. I chose to cut ties with my parents. It wasn't easy, but I had to do it to protect my own peace and happiness. When I went back to their house to collect my things, Mom just stood quietly by the window on the second floor, watching me. Dad didn't say a word and acted like I wasn't there. He's staying busy with his yard work. The house, once full of warm memories, now felt cold and empty. It has now been 7 months since that day. On weekends, I often meet up with Sarah, and we've become much closer as sisters. She has helped explain things to our relatives and friends. Once they found out that our parents took my money without asking and didn't keep their promise to return it, many of them started to stay away from my parents. Right now, I'm going through legal steps to make sure the money is paid back once it's approved. Actions like freezing their bank accounts will take place at work. I've been promoted and given more important tasks on my days off. I've started enjoying photography and have made some new friends through it. My relationship with my parents might never be fixed, but I believe I made the right decision. Sometimes walking away from your own family is the first step toward a better life. I understand that now. When I walk near the neighborhood where I grew up, I still feel a little pain inside, but it's not the strong anger or deep sadness I used to feel. Now it's more of a soft, quiet feeling, a small ache in my heart. We all have the right to choose our own path, even if it means saying goodbye to the people we once loved.